Lagos State, Nigeria's commercial heartbeat, is already buzzing with political tension as power blocks, Godfathers, and new contenders quietly position themselves ahead of the 2027 election. Now, behind the scenes, alliances are forming, loyalties are shifting, and questions are mounting about who truly holds the reins in the state that often sets the tone for national politics. Well, joining me right now to discuss this is Funso Doherty, as a former Lagos State governorship candidate, and he joins me live in the studio. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dapo. Thanks for having me.
All right. Before we get into the politics of Lagos, let's have your take on something that, of course, has been, around in terms of national discourse, and that has been the whole, what I call it, U.S.-Nigeria tension, that diplomatic tension that is brewing. The allegations by the U.S. and the concerns that the U.S. has raised, placing us on country of particular concern list. What's your take on that, and how do you suggest or recommend the government approaches this?
Okay, thank you. So I think, like many observers of this situation, what I think is most paramount for me is the wake-up call that it represents. And the fact that, whether we make a case for who is most affected or who is least affected, which group, which religious persuasion, that fundamentally we have a big insecurity problem and people are being killed. And this has gone on for a long time. And we need to do more to get the situation under control. That's what stands out the most in all the discussion. President Trump is a unique individual. He has a unique way of saying things and doing things. So perhaps part of what people are uncomfortable about is the fact that you can't quite predict the direction in which he might take things. And that's fair. I think the greatest protection we can offer to ourselves is to do the needful for ourselves, which is step up our engagement on the security level and fix this problem, which has been a long-standing problem. And if we have been half-hearted or have not put out all the machinery at our disposal to deal with this, both intelligence as well as operational, then I don't think we need any other signal to let us know that we need to be at the highest level of vigilance and execution on this. So that's my own take.
Some are suggesting that Nigeria opens its arms to partner with the U.S., while others are saying we should tread with caution, that maybe there might just be underlying interest on the part of the U.S.
Well, there may be underlying interests, and this would not be the first time. But in all our engagements with other governments, there's always an interest, right? So I think it's a standard thing in politics. And so, that we will not engage because there's an interest, I don't think is wise. I think that we should engage because in engaging, we can shape the form of that engagement. You see what I mean? So you don't want it to be something that is imposed on you in a way in which is uncomfortable for you or that challenges your sovereignty. But if you are involved in shaping that engagement, you can one, set the bounds of it to something that you're comfortable with. But also you can then take the lead and in terms of how that is perceived by other nations, not just the US now. So I think that I would not be one to say we should close our eyes to them or turn our backs to them. I think constructive engagement must be a part of how we the terms of engagement around this. Yeah.
All right. Let's bring it to Lagos State and talk about Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu right now, who, of course, is his administration, second term, is gradually winding down. How would you say the state has fared for, in the past almost 7 to 8 years now. Are you, are you, even though I know that you're a contender in the last election, are you proud to still remain a resident of, sort of Lagos State?
Well, I will always be proud to be a resident of Lagos as a Lagosian.
Okay.
This is my home and this is my heritage. So I will always be proud to be a Lagosian. That does not mean I am necessarily happy with the quality of governance that Lagos has had. Right? And that's partly why I am in the game, to be a contender. My overwhelming view of this, by the way, you said 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
So that's one way of looking at it, 7 or 8 years. Another way of looking at it is to say it's about 27 years, right? Because it's essentially been
the same
structure that has led and governed Lagos for the last, almost generation. Fundamentally, I think the way I would characterize the governance of Lagos is that Lagos, I think, has been undergoverned.
Undergoverned.
Yeah.
But some would say, looking at the level of development, it seems to be the blueprint of, well, I call it maybe development, achievement, compared to other states.
Well, you might think so, but it depends on the yardstick that you use.
Infrastructure, for instance.
Yeah, so if you use infrastructure and you say that it is the benchmark because Lagos has more infrastructure than any other state, I think that would be a wrong conclusion, because by definition, you expect Lagos to have more infrastructure than any other state. Lagos has by far more resources than any other state, by far. Lagos's revenue is by far more than any other state. And even if you take into account population, so if you look at revenue per capita, which is revenue for each resident, Lagos has far more than any other state. So it is expected that Lagos should have more infrastructure than other states. The yardstick in governance is not, necessarily just that. The yardstick in government is more about what have you done or what have you delivered to the people for the resources that you have deployed. And it is not just saying you have more infrastructure than Zamfara or you have more infrastructure than Kebbi, but to what extent have you been able to manage the resources of Lagos to deliver the outcomes in terms of people's lives for the resources that you've deployed over that extended period of time? And I think if you judge Lagos on that metric, you would reach a different conclusion. What is the purpose of governance? The purpose of governance must be reflected in the quality of life of the people that you govern. And by the way, this is even in our constitution. The purpose of government is what? The security and welfare of the people, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what's the welfare of the people? What is the welfare of the people? The educational options that they have, their healthcare situation, they have water, they have power, what is their housing situation, what is their quality of life, on these things that we call human development indicators. And if you look at these things, and you think about the resources that Lagos has deployed for the last 30 years, our budget for the last year is about 3 trillion. Think about the amount of resources that are being deployed on an annual basis, and then measure these human development indicators, and then the quality of people's lives. I think you would reach a different conclusion. Yoruba people have a saying, they say, "Tóbìnrin ò bá fẹ́ ọkọ méjì, kò ní mọ èyí tó dáa." So if you've had only one experience, you might look at it and say, but I come from the corporate world. When we judge CEOs of organizations, if you bring 2 CEOs and one CEO has 10 times the profit of the other CEO, the next question you're going to ask is, how much capital were you given to trade with? That's what will let me know whether that 10 times profit you brought is good or bad.
All right. Maybe I should put it this way.
Yeah.
Can you be specific in the areas you feel, in terms of administration, in terms of governance, in terms of leadership? Let me use the dynasty that has been in power all these years in Lagos have dropped the ball?
In a number of ways. In general terms, I would say that the governance of Lagos has been more extractive than inclusive.
Extractive than inclusive?
Than inclusive, yes. So generally, the governance of Lagos over the past 30 years has resulted in a concentration of the benefits of governance in a few at the expense of the many. So what are some of the ways? There are many. So if you look at housing, for example, right? 60 to 70% of people in Lagos live in informal settlements, right? If you think about what is required in terms of housing delivery in Lagos, it is far more than what has been done. And I think the approach is just a wrong approach because we're thinking too small. We need to be thinking about units of housing in the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. That is what Lagos needs. And then the question you then ask yourself is, how do you do that? What are the institutional structures you need to put in place? What are the financing structures you need to put in place? What, as a government, can you do to catalyze that outcome? You see what I mean? That's number one. Number two, if you look at metrics like even healthcare metrics, so if you take, for example, under 5 mortality, right, which is the number of children who survive to their 5th birthday, right? You asked for specifics, so I'm giving you specifics.
Yeah.
If you compare Lagos to the other states in the south west, which is our zone, right? You will find that in terms of that metric, Lagos is in the bottom 3, right? Not the top 3, in spite of the resources, right, that is deployed. Look at water. Lagos, in this day and age, still has a challenge with water. Provision of water across the state. Most people buy their water from, water, people drink pure water and stuff like that. They buy their water, right? These are things which is, even look at our mass transit. Look at our mass transit. Mass transit in Lagos is chaotic.
All right, we'll definitely come to that. Let's go on our first break. When we return, we'll dwell on that and also look at what some will refer to as the gale of demolition happening in many parts across the state and reactions that, of course, have come forth. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still Politics HQ on News Central Television. I still have Funso Doherty, former Lagos State governorship candidate, and he joins me live in the studio. Thank you for staying with me, sir. Now, let's quickly talk about the gale of demolitions happening in the state. That's of structures. Yeah. One of which is the Oworonshoki demolition. Now, the government has insisted that many of these structures are illegal, but residents are claiming that they did follow due process. But looking at the scale of many of these demolitions, I mean, it brings to wonder what exactly is going on. So for you, what do you think is missing here?
So I think there are a couple of pieces to this problem. First of all, is the fact that everybody recognizes that if there are constructions that are illegal, that are built in canals or drainages that are causing flooding, those must be addressed. I don't think there's anybody disputes that. The question you would then ask is, why did they have approvals? Why were they given approvals if they had approvals in the first place? So that's an administrative issue with government, right? But that we have to address that problem that's causing flooding, I think everybody would agree with that. But there's another type of demolition, which I think is where this Oworonshoki matter comes in. And these are demolitions as part of something that the government calls It's Urban Renewal Initiative.
Initiative.
And urban renewal is something that cities go through from time to time when you have blighted areas, informal settlements, and so on. So it is a valid ambition to have that you do urban renewal. But there's a way in which urban renewal should be done. Where you start from is actually a process of engagement, right? And you go through a process of engagement. It's a transparent process, right? It's not something that is done in secrecy. People understand what you are doing. They have an opportunity to comment and so on and so forth. So that by the time you get to demolition, it is that's like an endpoint. Do you see what I mean? As opposed to something where it almost seems like the demolition is a starting point, right? Now, the government might tell you that they've been engaging, but these are not things that are in the public domain, right? So if things were in the public domain, that here is our urban renewal plan for this area, and this is how we are doing it, and this is how we are, and these are the alternative provisions that we are making, right? You can imagine that the reception will probably not be like what we're seeing, right? So I think fundamentally there's a problem around planning and doing things with limited transparency and in secrecy, and that causes problems down the road. I've given the example before of Lagos Island. There's this thing that is done where the APC government has done some things they call model city plans, right? So they have one in the different local government areas. So they had done one for Lagos Island. And what they do is they do a draft. And, it wasn't put like in the public domain and put on websites where you could see it and all that. There was just one little thing in the newspaper that said, come to this office on such and such a day and look at it, right? If you're interested. I happen to see it, and I happen to be interested, obviously. And so I made sure that we got some of that material. And if you look at the original draft plan, it included a plan to reclaim land around Lagos Island into the lagoon, working with private developers, real estate developers, and to use the proceeds of that to fund flood control work on Lagos Island. And I wrote and I said that, you cannot take that approach. That one, there are environmental concerns around reclamation, and two, that why would we be selling our waterfront land to fund flood control? Flood control is being done in other local governments without having to sell land. So we shouldn't do that. And based on some of those agitations and so on, a revised plan came out, which I saw, which has dealt with that and removed that component of it. The point I'm making is that when you do things openly, transparently, and people have an opportunity to comment, one, it lets people know what you are doing. Two, you carry them along. And when you make alternative provision, ultimately, by the time you get to a place where you have to demolish as part of a valid urban renewal plan,
all right,
it is something that is understood and well understood and will not give rise to the kind of situation that we have in Oworoshoki.
All right, let's move to the politics right now ahead of 2027. You are obviously contending too. You'll be in the race in 2027 on the platform of the People's Democratic Party. And there's a ruling, I call it a party, dynasty, political party, so to speak, that has been in charge of the state. And there are some other key contenders too. My question to you is this. For an average Lagosian or Nigerian watching, they want to know, what are your chances?
I think our chances are very strong.
Given with what we are seeing within the PDP?
What are we seeing within the PDP?
The whole drama. The role, for instance, of the FCT minister, who still claims to be a party member and works for the ruling party.
That doesn't undermine the standing of PDP. The fact that, you see, what you have to understand is that the focus on PDP should be an indicator to you that PDP is the main opposition to the ruling party. That's why there's so much focus on trying to hamper and sort of reduce the effectiveness of PDP by whatever means. And that's what you see, because it's who you regard as a threat that you focus on. PDP today remains the main opposition.
How strong is the PDP?
We have
in
the
Lagos?
most governors rather than the APC. If you look at the National Assembly, we have the most National Assembly members other than the APC. So if you look at the opposition landscape today, right, there's no party that you can point to as a stronger opposition than the PDP. There's none. And Nigerians should also understand that it is in the interest of the country that there should be a strong opposition. It is not in the interest of the country that we should be moving in the direction of one party. It's not even in the interest of the people. And the people don't want it. They don't want it. Because you can't have democracy without opposition. If you don't have opposition, what you have is a dictatorship. So realize that on the issue of the narratives around PDP, the thing to take away from it is that PDP is the main opposition, remains the main opposition, and it is because of that that there's every effort to try and ensure that come 2027, PDP is not as strong to challenge the APC. But I can give you something for free, that when 2027 comes along, APC will be there, PDP will be there. We will not have a one-party state. I can tell you that. So all of this that we are seeing now is just narratives. And I would say, let's just wait and see.
Of course, we will definitely be on top of it with you and keep tabs, as all of it unfolds. But I'd like to say a big thank you. Thank you for coming on the program this evening. It's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.